We are so fortunate to have the Weir River watershed as our natural resource and source of fresh drinking water here in Hingham.
In a few moments, we will take you to places in the Weir River watershed that you won't want to miss.
Welcome to Trails of Discovery with your co-hosts Bob Mellers
And Sky Thaxter.
Trails of Discovery is a series that explores our natural resources that exist practically in your backyard here in Hingham.
In colonial times, the settlers in Hingham would have found several species of fish, such as flounder, striped bass, Atlantic pipers, and rainbow smelt. The Weir River watershed was one of the largest runs of smelt in the state until the 1990s. The flow of water along the Weir River provided enough power for Matthew Cushing to operate a sawmill at Triphammer Pond. The mill was used to form clapboards and shingles out of wood cut from local forest. This mill burnt in 1823, but was rebuilt to provide wood products for the shipping and fishing industry. The water wheel provided the power to operate the trip hammer. The Industrial Revolution brought changes to the Weir River because of the need for power to operate additional mills. Dams were built at Filling Mill Pond and Foundry Pond. This changed the river from a free-flowing, cold water rich in oxygen to a series of ponds with warm water and less oxygen. Businesses grew up along Foundry Pond. Hingham Malleable Iron Company erected a brick building near the pond in 1840. The businesses, over the next 30 years, did not prove a success, and in 1876 it burnt to the ground. It was followed by Colonel Weston's wool process factory, which lasted until 1888, when it burnt. The 1880s also brought the birth of the Hingham Water Company. A water system would provide a safe supply, protect against drought, and increase fire protection. By 1892, there were 1,500 customers and 43 miles of mains. When wells were drying up upon the peninsula of Hull, a pipe was run from Foundry Pond to Nantasket Beach to provide water for the hotels, steamboat companies, and amusement businesses.
As we enter the conservation area, you need to be sure you dress properly for the time of year and bring plenty of water and your camera. Sky is seen carrying a backpack that contains water, a snack, and sunscreen. Because of the potential for tick exposure, especially the deer tick, wear lightly colored clothes and tuck your pant legs into your socks, as seen here with Sky. The deer tick can carry Lyme disease and other infectious diseases. Consult your local outdoor sports business as to what products they recommend that repel ticks. With us today is Steve Ivis, a naturalist and wetland scientist, to talk about the Weir River watershed.
Good morning. I'm happy to be here. Thank you very much for the invitation, Sky and Bob. We're here standing at the old dike for Triphema Pond. And we are in the headwaters of the watershed itself. We're on the east side and in the headwaters, and we're looking at Triphema Pond. And this is quite a bit different from when we were here just a couple of weeks ago. We saw no pond lilies on the surface at all. Pond lilies mean that this water is probably less than 4 feet deep, because that's about their limit of where they grow. And we're looking at a lot more leaves out. It's early May 2023. A lot more leaves out from both the hardwoods and the softwoods, are the needle-leaf trees and the broadleaf trees. We're also seeing grapevines on this side of us, which would be our north side. And we are seeing also lots of invasive species all around us. Right down here is something that was brought in by the Soil Conservation Service. This is called multiflora rose. It was brought in to stabilize slopes along highways. And guess what? The birds took it and went everywhere with the seeds. And they dropped the seeds everywhere, and it's sprung up everywhere.
Steve, do the lily pads depend on any nutrients in the water to grow as much as they have? Is there something about the characteristics of the water?
Yes, there's lots of nitrogen and phosphorus in this water. And what happens is there's a huge reserve of nitrogen and phosphorus in the muds of the water here. And it's very shallow, and it warms up very easily in the summertime. So that we're recycling nutrients.
And what is the primary source of the nitrogen and phosphorus?
Well, the primary source from around here is lawn chemicals.
Fertilizers.
Fertilizers, exactly.
From a recreational standpoint, I understand that as the summer progresses, the lily pads in Triphema Pond impede recreational use of the water from a canoeing and kayaking perspective, because they get so dense it's hard to maneuver.
Yes, and also to swim. Similar to Jacobs Pond in Norwell.
Right.
You see them over some shallow ponds. Jacobs is probably at the most 6 feet deep. I would imagine this place is not that much deeper either. Is that correct?
Right.
Right.
And all of that is preventable if we didn't use lawn fertilizers.
Exactly. However, the only way to get those nutrients out of there now is to actually dredge the pond.
Yeah.
That would be the way to keep the lily pads from occluding the surface and occluding your paddles, kayaking and canoeing, and so on and so forth.
Well, Steve, let's go to the dam and take a look.
Sure. And what I want to show you on the way is some sensitive fern over here on this side. Okay. And we've got a little bit of Asian bittersweet here. And this is the fishway we're crossing right now. Beautiful spot here. And the water is high this spring, so we're seeing fishway water as well as water coming over the dam. So what we have here is some plants along the toe of the slope of the dam here on the pond side. And these are plants that have all volunteered in here. And what I'm seeing is some regular milkweed right here, which is great for the monarch butterflies. We're also seeing a lot of invasives, the multiflora rose, the Asian bittersweet, and this one right here that's blooming right now in early May. It's one of the first bloomers here, and I'm going to pick it up. And, well, I pulled part of it out. Usually you can get the roots. This is called garlic mustard. And people, if you see it anywhere, take it out, throw it aside. It's tough stuff. And it's It's allopathic, which means it's got some chemicals in it that don't allow the germination of other seeds. So we've got some honeysuckle right here, and that's also just starting to bloom. You see it right there? There's the flower there.
Is that an invasive?
Yes, it is, I'm sorry to say. There are many invasives along here. Many invasives. This is one of the mustard families. This is a mustard. It's in the mustard family. Right here, this yellow here. Also an early invasive. And then we've got some red maples coming in here. We've got some staghorn sumac right up here. Isn't that great? This is a good wildlife plant, and it grows very fast. And it's a good thing if you want some quick wildlife habitat in your backyard. It works great. And not only that, if you plant one, soon you'll have 10.
Yes.
In the next 3 years, you'll have 10. It's a great wildlife, and it makes these, you can see, it makes these large colonies. You sometimes see it along the sides of the highways. They have had planted, and then there's a colony that surrounds it. And the middle of the colony will be the largest plant, and then you'll see smaller plants along the sides. And they'll grow up, of course, but it's a really interesting phenomenon. I love it watching it when on the highways.
Can you use that to make your lawn more wild and natural?
Oh, absolutely. I have myself.
You have.
Yeah, I've cut down my mowing duties by planting or allowing some of the sumac to grow.
Okay.
Right here, people think it's an invasive, but it's not. It's green briar, Smilax rotundifolia, and it's a great plant for wildlife habitat because nobody wants to go in there or do anything else near it. It's a great plant.
And the reason they don't want to go in there?
It's got thorns and it's difficult.
It's a thorny plant.
Very thorny, and in fact, when I'm a wetland scientist and I do a lot of delineations, I have these pruners that sometimes it takes me 10 minutes to cut to where I want to put my flags. But what we also have here is another invasive, however. It's a beautiful invasive. That's why it was brought in from, I think, somewhere in Asia. It's called purple loosestrife. And we're just seeing the old portions right here. And then we see the new portions down in here. The new plants right here. And it's in the mint family. It does have a square stem. We also have one of the other Sagittarias coming out of the water right here, which is pretty neat. And of course, our old friend, poison ivy. The poison ivy leaves are much redder than they are during the regular season. They turn out to be green leaves, but they're red when they first come out, which is interesting. So that's another way to find them. We have another wetland plant here. This is called soft rush. Right here, rushes are round and sedges have edges. So this is a round rush. Easy to remember, right? Yeah, this one's called soft rush, and it grows very quickly in any. It's a volunteer in places that have sometimes been upended or the soil has been removed from the top layer. It will colonize very quickly. Small seeds, and it goes on the wind.
Well, we've arrived at the southwest corner of the pond where Matthew Cushing had his first mill in the early 1700s.
And we're also very close to Wampatuck State Park on the south end of the pond, which is parallel to the south end of the pond. We're looking over the pond here, seeing the island and a whole bunch of geese. And behind us, we've got the remains of the old mill that was built around 1700. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Well, there was one mill here in 1823, that was was the second mill.
Mm-hmm.
Both of them were here, one in the 1700s and one in 1823.
And interesting, I note that people must have lived here for a while because this plant right here is Rosa rugosa, the one you see at the seashore, and it's usually planted. So this has probably got some roots that go back a long, long time. And I see a strawberry plant right there, I think.
Steve, I see some interesting trees in this area.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about this.
Yes, this is a witch hazel forest. A witch hazel plant is one that's doesn't grow very high, maximum 20 feet or so, and it's the same plant that provides the astringent witch hazel that your parents may have rubbed all over your chest when you were a child. And that's, you know, and they take it off the witch hazel trees there, or the witch hazel shrubs, more specifically.
It used to be a remedy for hemorrhoids.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Our adventure continues as we explore the Weir River watershed. We're now off to the Weir River Farm.
Great. We'll look forward to it.
Well, we're now at the Weir River Farm, owned by the trustees, and near a wooden bridge that crosses the Weir River.
And it's not the Rood Bridge that crossed the Concord River, it's the Weir River, and it's the main stem. Okay? And if you look at the river very carefully, you'll see behind us that it's coming toward us, and it's eating away at the wall of the river itself, right behind us. In fact, somebody's put in a lot of rocks to assist the stability of this area. But on the outside turns, rivers take away the land and they deposit on the inside turns because the outside turns run faster than the inside turns. And so this is an interesting area because it's the main stem. We were on a tributary, now this is the main, and we're in a plain. Think of main stem in the plain here at a lower elevation, and we are overlooking a field of skunk cabbage. And the skunk cabbage looks like it's in a groundwater discharge zone. There's a little hill with a structure and a barn, and then there's a road between the structure and the field of skunk cabbage. So this is where the groundwater discharge water comes out of the ground at this level, very close to the river. The river is interesting because it's got a lot of invasives as well as native species next to it. And in fact, if I just go up on top of the bridge here and point out these right here, this is the red maple seedling called a samara, and it has a little helicopter effect when it comes down to the ground, or down to the river in this case.
I see many different shaped vines growing on the other side of the river here. Can you tell us a little bit about them?
Sure. We've got our riverbank grape, which is this vine that's, you know, you can see it's coming apart as it grows larger here. Okay, that's the grapevine. It's a brownish red vine. And then you've got this twisty vine, which is the Asian bittersweet. This is the invasive that will actually bring down the trees eventually. So it'll have to be cut at the bottom.
So the grape is more linear and
yes,
the bittersweet is twisted.
Right, and the grape will use the tree as a structure just to hold on to and go up, but the twisted vine will actually turn around and actually kill the tree. And as you can see, as we go up the trunk, it's trying to go around the trunk itself, okay? Anthropomorphizing the vine. We also have another invasive on the ground here, which is called lesser celandine. It's already bloomed, and we've seen it in Milton down to Hingham here, and it's a dense green leaf, and it covers the entire ground. We've just got a couple of sensitive ferns down there that have made it in some bare ground. We've also got some other honeysuckle and multiflora rose here in amongst the wonderful silky dogwood. This is an excellent wildlife habitat plant here, and I see a little bit of arrowwood along the bank as well, which is another excellent wildlife plant to have in your backyard.
Excellent.
We have an interesting plant right here. It's got a really interesting smell. You'll never forget it as long as you live. It's a good smell, this one. Opposite the cherry smell. Here, smell of that.
Yeah, that's delightful.
Yeah, that's a wetland indicator plant. It's called northern spicebush. It's probably already flowered. It's got a beautiful yellow little flower, and it comes out very early in the season. It's also, again, a wetland indicator plant. It's sitting right next to the arrowwood, and these are the buds for the arrowwood flowers. They're already out, which means our season is really advanced this year. Okay? Very advanced. And we should go on.
Well, we've now come to a raised roadbed, it looks like.
Indeed it is. We're looking over to our west at Route 228, and behind us we have the river and the bridge, and we have really interesting different management styles. We have a hayfield on one side, and we have a mature woodland. Looks like a wet woodland on the other side of this roadbed here. And this raised bed is at least, almost 6 feet high.
Yeah.
So that must have been a lot of work to do this. On top of the roadbed itself right now, we've got some very large cherry trees with this plated bark here. And again, there were two different management styles for this road, two sides of the road. One, everything was cut and has been hay for a long time, I'll bet, probably 200 years or so. And these trees are probably on the order of 100 years old. So nothing's been done on that side, probably for at least 100 years. And we're looking at the upstream to the river here, to our left. We're here at the downstream side of Rockland Street, in where the estuary starts. The estuary is where the fresh water intersects with the salt water. And it looks like it's low tide here. Across the way, on the western side of the stream, there's some phragmites, also called common reed, over there across the road, across the stream by the electric facility. And on this side, we've got salt marsh right below us on the bottom of a slope above a much more steep slope down to the water. Behind me, we've got a plant that some people mistake for poison ivy, but it isn't. I wouldn't be handling it if it was. This is called woodbine or Virginia creeper. And notice it's got a viney pattern and it goes up the tree. It's using the tree as a support It won't kill the tree. It won't damage the tree in any manner. It's just using it for support.
Well, Steve, it looks like we're looking up the upper estuary, but I see a green grass and then abruptly tall grass beyond it.
And it's even more complicated than that, Bob. Yeah, we're here right across the street from where we were before, in the estuary, where the estuary really begins. And the estuary was much larger before they put this filling in for the bridge and the roadway here. But it's complicated because we've got a low marsh situation here where we have a species of cordgrass, and then we've got another species of cordgrass called the high marsh, which we will see on the film a little bit later at the end. And then we have this dam Phragmites. It's also called common reed, and it's a really invasive plant. I think it came over from Europe, probably with the ballast that people used to bring over in ships. And it's all the way up this estuary. And on the very, very outlying margins, where the salt concentration is quite high, the Phragmites doesn't grow. Phragmites grows to about 15 parts per thousand of salt, and then it stops. And notice how it's a very strict line where the Phragmites stops. That's how high the 15 parts per thousand line is when the salt water comes up the marsh here.
So this bridge is restricting the flow of salt water up into the upper estuary, which is allowing there to be a lower salt content that allows the Phragmites to flourish?
Exactly. We have met the enemy and he is us.
So if this bridge was reconfigured,
Yes.
we would then restore this to a natural habitat.
Yeah, we call it, we'd have a better flushing of the area, complete better flushing.
So wildlife that depends on the natural habitat have been displaced to some degree by the Phragmites.
Yes, and there aren't many things that the Phragmites does for wildlife. There's a few birds that live among the Phragmites, but that's about it. The low marsh and high marsh are much more species diverse with regard to what's living into the ground and also above the ground in the salt marsh.
Well, this has been quite an adventure today. And thank you, Steve, for sharing your knowledge with us. But I'm afraid that it's once again that time to say goodbye until next time on Trails of Discovery.
And thank you, Bob and Sky. We've had a wonderful day.